to make sure that Israel is safe and that Israel is free, and that they can seek for peace. So there's a strong inclination for all of us to support Israel's continued existence in peace. and that is added on to by the very effective work of the American-Israeli group called AIPAC, which is performing its completely legitimate task of convincing Americans to support the policies of the Israeli government. And AIPAC is not dedicated to peace. They're dedicated to inducing the maximum support in America, in the White House, in the Congress, and in the public media for whatever policies the Israeli government has at a particular time, and they're extremely effective.
Do you agree with Walt and Mearsheimer, their new book, The Israel Lobby, about the power of AIPAC determining U.S. foreign policy? I
have to say I haven't read the book. I've read stories about it. I don't really know about the details of it, but I do know that AIPAC is very powerful and completely legitimate. I'm not complaining because that's their purpose in life, and AIPAC, I think, was organized in the distant past, I think, when Eisenhower was president, and they've grown in influence, and in some ways they are to be admired.
Did they influence you as president?
Not really, because I was immune from those pressures. When I was elected president, you know, I came out of nowhere. Nobody thought I was going to win until the last minute, and so I wasn't obligated to them. And I worked assiduously almost every day of my term as president to bring peace to Israel, and also peace to Israel's neighbors. And we negotiated a peace treaty between Israel and Egypt, not a word of which has ever been violated. So I don't think there was any doubt that that my commitment then and now was to see Israel have peace, living in harmony with its neighbors, and justice as well, and peace for Israel's neighbors.
President Carter, when did you come to understand, through your presidency and beyond, the situation of the Palestinians?
Well, the situation with the Palestinians when I was president was not all that bad. The first time I went to Israel, I was governor, and I went to the West Bank. There were only 1,500 settlers in all of the West Bank. And the general presumption, even by Israeli leaders with whom I met, was that Israel would withdraw from the Palestinian territories. It was a temporary thing. And when I negotiated an agreement with the Prime Minister of Israel, Menachem Begin, he agreed that the political forces and the military forces of Israel would be withdrawn from Palestinian territory. That's all in the written agreement. But in the last 10 years, I would say the situation has deteriorated rapidly. Not many people are permitted to go and visit as we have done. For instance, members of B'Tselem, the outstanding human rights organization within Israel, those members are not permitted to go into areas of the West Bank. They have to observe from a distance what goes on, say, in Gaza now. But on 3 occasions, the Carter Center, led by me personally, have been invited by the Palestinians to monitor their election. In 1996, when Arafat was elected president and the first parliament, so-called, was elected. Again, after Arafat died, when Mahmoud Abbas was elected president, and then in 2006 in January, when the Hamas ran for parliamentary seats, and they were successful. So in performing the duty of monitoring election, we are obligated to go to every village and every town in the entire West Bank, and also throughout Gaza, to see what's going on. So we could see the terrible plight of the Palestinians, the fact that Israel has over 200 settlements on Palestinian territory, all fortified, that Israel has over 500 checkpoints in Palestine where the Palestinians can't move from one place to another, and where there's a wall being built completely surrounding Gaza, completely surrounding Bethlehem and other substantial-sized cities, deeply intruding into Palestinian territory and encompassing more and more land for the Israelis to take away from Palestine. And the fact is that the The West Bank is a tiny little place that was carved out for the Palestinians, just 22% of the total land. But the problem is that Israel wants to take that 22% and control it. And major highways are built from one Israeli settlement to another and into Jerusalem, from which on many of those highways the Palestinians can't even ride, or sometimes can't even cross the highways. So this is what's happening inside Palestine, perpetrated by the Israelis, and this is a major obstacle to having what I want and what most Israelis want, by an overwhelming majority, and that is peace.
At this conference, you described the wall as worse than the Berlin Wall.
Oh, it's much worse. The Berlin Wall was built by the communists on the communist side of the border between East and West Germany, as you know. This wall is built on Palestinian land, and it's designed not for security. That's an ancillary benefit, but it goes deep within the West Bank just to carve out more and more land for the Israelis to occupy in Palestine.
What is the point of the wall?
The wall was planned originally by Yitzhak Rabin when he was prime minister. He's the one that negotiated the Oslo Agreement, a peace agreement, to be built along the border, the 1967 border between Israel and Palestine. And the International War Court and I and others approved completely. There's nothing wrong with that. That would have been like the Berlin Wall. But then Rabin was assassinated, and his successors, Netanyahu and Sharon and others, decided, let's move the wall from the Israeli border to intrude deeply within Palestine to carve out some of that precious land for the Israeli settlers to occupy.
What do you think of the Supreme Court, the Israeli Supreme Court ruling that the wall has to be rerouted when it comes to the city of Beilin?
Well, that's a tiny little place. I'm familiar with the geography. The Israeli court system is a very strange one. I describe it to some degree in my book. Almost all the decisions in the West Bank are made by military courts. It's not the civilian court. On occasion, rare occasions, the Palestinian people have been able to get an allegation before the Israeli Supreme Court that the wall is intruding excessively on their land. And it may be that 300 yards of the wall would have to be modified if it divided, say, a Palestinian family from their cemetery or from their gardens and so forth. And that does apply. And the wall is rerouted to accommodate that particular court case. But the Israeli courts also have a policy different from our courts, that nothing that the Supreme Court rules sets a precedent. If the Supreme Court rules that this wall is overly intrusive, it just applies to that little 300 yards of the wall and not to the entire concept of the wall. So it's almost impossible for a Palestinian community to hire an Israeli lawyer or a group of lawyers to take their case to the Supreme Court and have the ruling made. So that's a very rare occasion, but a very valuable occasion for that particular community.
President Carter, you and President Clinton differ strongly on these issues. Clinton has blamed the Palestinian leadership for rejecting what he called a generous peace offer from Israel and the U.S. beginning at Camp David in July 2000.
Yes.
Your view?
Well, I spell it out in the book. I mean, it's completely accurate. There was a very heroic effort by President Clinton, and I have expressed my admiration for him and my appreciation for his effort. But the proposal that he made was very ephemeral. There were never any maps drawn. There were never any particular delineation of a future border between Israel and the Palestinians. And the proposal that was made also permitted the Palestinians, the Israelis, to have still large portions of Palestine. And it did ostensibly restore about 90%